Hey everyone, welcome to A Great Alternative. In today's video, I'm going to make some wands. Although today I am following one wand from start to finish, I'm also going to highlight various different wands and different end results that I've got so far, because I think it's quite interesting to show the varied results that a beginner like me can get. The best time to harvest is winter time. This is for a couple of different reasons. Not only is it easy to see everything, but also for the trees and the plants and whatever it is that you're foraging, that's the best time of year for them. They've gone into their dormant stage, they're not producing, they're not trying to grow, so you're not stunting the growth. So therefore, if you're in your garden, for example, it might be time to just kind of prune things up. If you're in a public space, they may be cutting or coppicing at this time of year, or again, winter time, it's generally the weather's not so great, the wind's up, and that might also be a time when things fall down. For me, over winter time, I was harvesting in all of these different ways. The one main one that I got the majority of my material that's wands, and you can see just behind me some of these staffs here, is where in a public area that is near where we live, someone had gone through, and I don't know what machinery they used, because I don't think it was big enough for a tractor to get through, but clearly something that had kind of turning blades on it was used, because what they seem to have done is kind of just tear things down. It clearly wasn't cutting everything. They clearly weren't coppicing with loppers or a kind of more direct saw specifically to the right area. They were just driving over stuff, ripping it out and cutting it down, kind of. What that then ended up meaning is that there was just so much bits and pieces of kind of, I would guess, at a year to 2 years worth of growth of things that were just all over the floor. So some of them were the length of, entire branches, like behind me, 6 foot, 8 foot kind of branches, down to things that could maybe, like behind me, be used for weaving, really thin, pencil thickness or thinner type stuff. In regards to what you're looking for, this is where you get to be creative. If you're finding something like a walking stick, for example, and you want it to be extremely uniform and straight and perfect, then you need to look for that. That's where hedgerows are great, or areas that are coppiced. So, for example, hazel, like this one, it grows perfectly straight because a whole load of shoots are tightly packed together, and they're just trying to reach up and get as quickly to the sun as they can, which means they get these long, perfectly straight bits. Or, for example, you've got something like this is part of a hedgerow, as you can see, perfectly lovely and straight, but then this is where things have grown out of the top and then been cut down after a season or so, and then it grows again and cut down, and then what you end up is with this lovely knobbly kind of thing that I absolutely love, and maybe the choice for the one today, not sure yet. Or you might be looking for things that have very specific kind of characteristics to them, like this one where it's clearly had damage and therefore it's kind of healed itself, or like this one that is a root, so it's all higgledy-piggledy and twisty, and yeah, absolutely love it. Getting a bit excited. Jason, calm down, slow down. Or like this one here. This is why this is one of my favorite, well, they're all my favorite bit, but this is why this is one of my favorite bits, because you get to go out into the woodland, into the wilderness, and you can treat the woods or your garden, any natural space, you can treat it like a candy store. You're going into the craft stall. Let your imagination run wild. Think of the stories behind these pieces, and this, like how knobbly and gnarly and just how cool that is. Clearly that's not long enough to be a wand, so I'm gonna have to, this one I think will be a video in itself, like a future project, so I need to somehow stick the rest of the wand onto that, and I haven't figured out a way to do that yet. But I myself am interested and passionate about making things for fun, for props, for play. They're toys. I'm not necessarily downplaying that wands are used by people. I'm a beginner and I'm just making these as a fan for the aesthetic and the genre, and also a love of films and props and things like that. So therefore, I'm not necessarily looking for specific materials because they have certain properties. Overall, I'm just looking for something that inspires and excites me about this craft. In regards to storing and drying them, that's weaving material behind me, staffs here, and wands generally here. And the way that I store them is in this shed. Basically, it's a well-ventilated area. It has concrete flooring, however, I'm storing them in plastic buckets, so there is it's not touching the ground, you know, because if you were to leave them outside touching any kind of dirt or natural material, that is a way that potentially things and organisms can get into the wood and deteriorate it, so you don't want that. And every so often I might just have a look, get them all out and have a look and make sure things aren't getting wet in there or rotting or there aren't any other bugs and things. For example, I did actually make a mistake and I'd collected something just off the floor. It had started to rot and actually had bugs on the inside of it. So it wasn't until I'd cut it apart and I actually found bugs borrowed? No, the borrowers. It's the borrowers. And they're borrowing. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, they'd dug their way into the wand and actually there was like this tunnel within the wand, in the stick itself. And therefore, obviously, the integrity of the piece was, it wasn't good, perfect for the insects, so I put it back outside. In regards to storing and how long to dry out your materials, that obviously depends on what it is that you've got. So, for example, this is hazel here. Hazel, willow will dry out a lot quicker than things like blackthorn and oak and stuff like that. Basically, a good rule of thumb is if you get to the point that you think it's ready, just kind of scratch off the bark using the back of your knife or something. If it's still green, that means it's not ready yet. Now, in my case, I've still not necessarily listened to that advice because I'd like to potentially have a go at with some of the wands at kind of sticking them back together. So I've dried them out deliberately quickly so that they crack apart, and then when they crack apart, I'll stick them back together, and that'll be kind of the magic that's cracked it and warped this thing, and as part of the character of the wand itself. If you don't want that to happen, then patience is what you need. Patience is what I don't have. So I'd harvested everything, I'd been incredibly patient and waited for things to dry out fully, but I wanted to get making my wand. So now the next stage is choosing your wand. I need to make some space. This might not work. Okay, this one. It's kind of cool. Yeah, we'll leave you there. Right. Okay. Now, these are the 4 boxes that I've been storing things in. They are a mixture between things that I'm hoping to use in sculptural pieces, like this one. This is going to be a sculptural piece. I think that is just absolutely stunning. I love the way it curves. I'm thinking I might even have something that hangs from this one. Anyway, sculptural piece, or something of that size could be used for something like a handle for a basket. Today, we're looking at things like this that are a little bit thinner. The other reason, obviously, you can make wands out of thicker pieces of material, and there may be various reasons why you might want to do that. The reason why I chose to do it out of things this size or something maybe even smaller like this one is because I'm hand carving it. So it just made sense to me that, why would I start with something that's, I'm going to have to carve so much material off to get to the thickness of the wand that I want, which, is not far off something like that. So therefore, that's what we're looking for today. So the kind of things that I've been trying out as a beginner to this craft is things like this one, where in essence, I've just picked a very simple straight piece, and I'm going to then practice carving onto something like this. And this is all about the practice of carving. It could be something like this one, where this was going to be a kid's one, so it was a lot smaller, but I wanted to leave the bark on. That could also be similar to one like this one, where I've already started this. Again, I'll show you how I did this later on, but where I started this and I deliberately want to leave the bark on. So again, I know the thickness is about right, and also I know the end result is I want to leave some of this bark on, so therefore the bark needs to aesthetically look nice. It's not got any big kind of cracks in it or things where it's been damaged and I then don't like how the damage looks. Or you could look for things like this one that has a curve to it, or something that has some kind of flow to it that you like. The reason why I picked this one, and I absolutely love it, is because it just seems to be just made for my hand. It's amazing, or just anyone really that's right-handed. The way it just kind of fits around my hand, and it's just, yeah, absolutely just like, oh, I just love it. For example, like this one, it actually went straight and then curved off to one side, and I've made it go straight because I wanted this bit to go straight. So you're kind of thinking a step ahead maybe, and thinking, okay, well, I might correct this bit and or accentuate a certain bit. Or you could go, for example, like this one, which is like root, and this is where this was from the same tree that this one ended up at, that I know that the bark's been kind of taken off already, so it has a smoothness, and also it just looks pretty, it looks amazing as is. So therefore there's one where you're just really not going to do that much to it at all, other than just maybe make one of the end thinner than the other, like this one. Before filming this, I may have already had a look through all of these different boxes, got this one all out, all over the floor, and gone through lots of different types. And yeah, I definitely found it difficult.
Which one? Can't decide.
This is just the time where, again, you can just get excited. Did I mention that maybe every single bit is my favorite bit? Apologies if I'm rambling a bit too much and getting off track, but back to the story. So I've gone through all of these boxes. I've looked for things that kind of inspire me. I've picked certain things out already, but for the main project for today, I think I may have found it. So, know how I mentioned before about how hedgerows shoot up these beautifully straight pieces that then end up with these really gnarly bits at the end? I haven't done anything to this so far other than coppice it. This is a piece of hedgerow that's been cut and has grown, and then been cut and has grown. And yeah, you need a quick hammer in the woodland, a quick bludgeoning thing. That's where you need to go. So why I'm picking this one is because I think this will just, it fits nicely into my hand, and it's nice and straight. So I think we have our winner. I like this one. I've gone through all my different materials, found the ones that I want to make. Now it's time to carve. One extra thing before we start carving, health and safety advice would be to wear something like these. These came free with the tools that I've got, which are just, I think, worth about 15 quid, very basic tools. And these are gloves to stop you cutting yourself. Obviously, if you literally went for it, I'm sure you could. I've noticed that it's too smooth. So therefore you're holding something like a knife and it can slip really easily. So to me, I don't know, I just can't get on with these at all. If anyone has any recommendations for other safety gloves that work because maybe they're rubberized or they have a bit more grip, or yeah, just how to use these effectively and safely, please comment down below, because for me, they just don't make sense. So throughout this process, I've used a few different methods for how to carve, and I'll get into them now. Before that though, I just want to cover the equipment that I've got. I've got sort of some bushcraft type knives. The difference between this one and the carving ones is that there's a much thinner profile to the carving ones, which obviously makes carving that bit easier. So it doesn't mean if you happen to have a bushcraft knife, doesn't mean you can't do it with that, but it does mean that it might be a little bit harder to start with. This tool set that I've got here was a present from friend of the channel, Anuna Healing. I'm guessing it's a fairly beginner tool set, and one of the reasons it's perfect for me, but also one of the reasons why I think it's a beginner tool set is with this knife here, it's very, very thin, and my guess is the quality of the steel isn't amazing because it's only worth, I think, about 15, 16 quid. And the beginner, the Egypt, like me, was carving, and when you carve, a rule of thumb that I've learned, you would think I should know this already, is that you're always going flat. You can't, if you get stuck in the wood, you're not twisting and prying anything away with the thinnest part of the blade. That's how you get little nicks like this. Yeah. So there's your warning, don't do that. Now, the methods that I've been using. First up, the most obvious one is called the thumb push. I'm holding the wand with my left hand and I'm using my left thumb to push the knife. This is perfect for if you're just doing tiny little pieces like this. So it's a very controlled, because if you're holding it close to you, again, obviously, like right now, I'm not near my legs or any arteries or anything like that. So it's also quite safe, and I can just slowly just push and work. And then depending on how you hold the blade, I found that sometimes this bit's really easy if I'm using right on that tip and I'm getting into certain bits and I'm maybe twisting my wrist a little bit more to really kind of get into the space that I want to and get the cut that I want. Secondly, and the one that I've used the most throughout this process, you may have seen me do this in other videos, but basically I get my hand that's holding the knife, place it on a table. This hand isn't really moving at all, other than maybe the slightest twisting. And then this hand, with this flat, you've inevitably created a gap underneath between the blade and the floor, and then you're just doing this. It's a bit awkward where I'm sat right now. I suppose what I probably would do is I would do it slightly to my left, because then my arm can rock as if I was soaring, basically. You want that to be fairly uniform, back and forth and back and forth. And the more you do it, the more you get to be level, and you're not kind of going up and then the next one down and up and down and all over the place. You want to be fairly uniform, and you're just kind of slowly dragging it across. This is a way, when you're first beginning, to take off a lot of material, but at the same time, once you get to a certain point, like I am now with this specific wand, is I don't want to take lots, so I'm just taking tiny little bits. There are a few little problem areas. So for example, on this one, it's a knot, that's why it's catching there on that bit. But you're just ever so slowly pulling it back like this. And what you want is these beautiful little curves, because that's a nice, long, smooth cut. Once you've done that cut, you just ever so slightly, you're just twisting your wrist ever so slightly. And because what you're trying to do is always cut on where there's a point. So inevitably you cut once and you create a flat bit, and then there'll be a point created next to that flat bit. So you twist until you've got the next point, and then that makes it nice and easy for the knife to get into that bit and carve there. And that's where, when you're creating long sticks like this, basically long wands, it's easy to then create a nice round shape, because you can just slowly work it round and round and continue until you've got the shape that you needed. Next up, another staple, and that's the chest pull. You've got your knife hand close to your chest, but you're holding it with a grip like this, so the blade is pointing that way. So the blade, technically, if I was to hold it like this, the blade is facing towards me, okay? And then the left hand also braced against my chest. And the reason for bracing it against your chest is because if I was to hold it out here, I've got nowhere near as much control, so it's a lot more dangerous. So you get your piece of what you're carving, brace that into your chest, and then you're just doing this, opening it up. You're only really moving a tiny bit at a time, and this is a much stronger carving technique, so you can really put in quite a bit of pressure. So for example, if you've got a knot and you need to sort of get in there and really kind of pull that knot apart, this is a great cut to do that. And because you're only doing this, you just kind of, you imagine you're opening your back muscles, you're just kind of pushing them together, and then they open, curve round, back like that, and that's the majority of the movement. So therefore, again, hopefully there should be no way that you can hurt yourself. Next up is the feather stick. Now, if you're a bushcraft enthusiast, this is one that is another staple that you've probably learned. It's one that I definitely need to practice. I'm not very good at it. I filmed people like Jamie at How Bushcraft doing this, and they're wonderful at it. But it's one that I found quite useful when I've been removing a lot of material at the start of the wand making process. In this context, it's a similar method for creating a fire stick, but I'm going all the way to the end and cutting all the way off the end. You can put the wand or the whatever it is that you're cutting into a place that it won't then move around, because you are going to put a bit of pressure on this and you don't want it to slip away from you. So I've got this on the table, I've got my arm nice and straight. All you're doing is this motion. So all that's moving, my right arm, the one that's got the knife in it, I'm not doing anything like this. I'm going just straight down It's my shoulder and my kind of body that's sort of doing that movement down. This hand, again, isn't necessarily doing anything either. And then if you're good at it, you shouldn't have to use really any force. You're just kind of leaning your body weight into it, and you should hopefully be able to get nice. Well, there you go, that was not that bad. Nice, long, smooth cuts like that. Next up, the stop cut. Now, the way I've seen other carving channels explain this is you press the knife directly down into the wood and then going against that piece and doing a thumb push until it stops, and you'll hear a kind of click as it hits the piece where you've just cut. As you get further down, like I have in this example here, this is how I've basically created this. So it's directly down, pushing down like this, and then using the thumb push to cut in and slowly cut bits away, and then turn it round and then do maybe another thumb push to kind of even things out, and then the same on the other side. And then last but no means least is the V cut. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to do a spiral, and it's very similar to the stop cut. You would mark out, maybe with a pen or even a knife, but lightly, you just mark out your spiraling line, and then using your knife, you're then going and push down, creating a cut that runs down the spiral of your wand. And then using a thumb push, you'll push in, and similar to how a stop cut works, you're cutting in a V, in essence, into that gap. And it's just thumb push, turn it around, thumb push, turn it around, thumb push. So to recap, that's the thumb push, the chest pull, the flat pull, the feather stick, the stop cut, and the V cut. That's so far all of the types of cut that I've used. There are definitely lots more, but these have enabled me to be quite creative with the ones that I'm making, plus safe, which is the most important thing. Having talked about carving, first up then is choosing the size of your wand. Now, in a bit of research that I did, generally it's seemed to come out that between 9 to around 15 inches. Obviously, that's going to depend on, is it for a child? Is it for an adult? What's the size of your hands? As far as I'm concerned, there's no kind of hard and fast rule. It's just what feels right to you. I can't decide whether to keep the bark on or to carve this all off. I think I might try and leave a bit of the bark on and smooth a bit of the bark off, so that this bit is nice and smooth and sits comfortably and maybe goes round my hand but kind of sits nicely and is all smooth, and then this bit here is just this little gnarly bit. Also, what you want to work out at this stage is where you want the end of the wand section to be and where the handle might begin. So I think I'm going to be conservative, start off a bit further down, and then I can always choose to carve something in later and bring the wand itself further up and make the handle a little bit shorter. So now it's just a case of taking away the majority of the material of this part of the wand. So I've got the majority of what will be the wand here carved so that I'm pretty happy with the rough shape. And then next stage, I think I'm going to try and add one of the curves to this until I have something that looks like this here. Bearing in mind the end result is, I hope, to be something like this. But I think what I'm going to try and do first, I might even go and sit outside and do this bit, is cleaning all of this bit up. So it's going to be potentially using the saw to carve off some of the main bulks and bits and pieces, and then just lots and lots of small thumb cuts to just slowly carve everything away all around the edges until I've got something that I'm happy with. Okay, all carving on this one complete, and all of the others. Next stage is sanding. Now again, today is about using hand tools, so I'm not going to use any kind of sand power tool. Obviously that would make things quicker using a belt or something like that, and many videos that I've watched, that's what they use. But today I'm going for the cheapest, not easiest, scrub that, the cheapest option that can be done with my mitts. For me, that's this stuff, and this is 23 pieces of varying from coarse, medium, fine, extra fine. So that goes from 60 grit up to 150. Here's a couple that I've done already. This was where with both of these, I started with the 60, then the 80, 120, and then the 150, just slowly working my way down until basically, yeah, until I was happy. The only really method I used was to break it up into small pieces and just to sand it. Oh, actually, no, and one specific bit that I did find for if you're doing this curve here, I basically got a stick, wrap it around, but not all of the way, enough that it holds in place, but I'm not wrapping and wrapping and wrapping, so that you know the diameter will always be the same, and then just using that and keep going again, 60, 80, 120, 150, until you're happy with that nice smooth edge. Other than that though, for the main wand, I ended up carving out, and I did use, so although so far, and with all of the others, all I've used is sandpaper and a knife. With this one, I did use this, which is a gouge, and it was perfect for getting right in there and getting everything out without, like I have before, where I snapped the blade, I broke a little bit off the blade, was because I was basically prying. This tool is perfect for that. So I just cut everything away that I felt needed to be cut away, and then tried to just round off all the edges, ready for the next stage. But for now, time lapse of sanding, let's go for it. Through the magic of television, we have completed the sanding. That's definitely something I've learned in this process, is that take your time. Use it as something where, like for example, a lot of these ones I was just kind of popping out for an hour here, an hour there. I wasn't doing things unlike this one, which I did from start to finish, and it very much made my hands and some of my muscles kind of ache because you're doing similar movements like this. This took me the best part of 5, maybe 6 hours to do this one, as well as maybe the others. So we've ended up with 5. We've got this one and this one that are pretty much as they came. All I've done with this one is straightened off one end and the other end here. This one, I cut something off there and rounded off the corner, and other than that, made that straight. And then that one, rounding off the edge and then putting the spiral in. Same with this one, putting a spiral in and a couple of little extra creative bits here. And then the main one, which again, really not much, just putting a spiral in, carving out some of these bits, and then a little bit more faff to get this one all smoothed off and nice. So now, the next stage, finishing things off. I did quite a bit of research for how to preserve your wood, and the things that came out on top was beeswax and mineral oil. Please do your research yourself. I am a complete beginner, so don't go with what I'm saying as gospel, but that for my research, that's what came out as the kind of safest option, as well as aesthetically pleasing option. What I've got here, this is made by Journeyman Handcrafts. You may not have seen the video that I made with Brian from Journeyman Handcrafts where he made me a bushcraft bag. We even made a video together about how to re-wax properly your canvas, and that's where you can use a block like this here, So I use this on leather products and wax products like this one, the bottom of this one. And then this is in a form that just means you can either heat it up and use a brush. It's exactly the same product. It's just so that you can either get it out yourself with a rag or something like that and do little bits at a time. And this one is meant really for doing quite a lot at a time. For example, if you're doing a big blanket or something like that. After asking Brian, I found out that this is made up of beeswax and almond oil. So it's a little bit different to what I'd found, because generally mineral oil and beeswax was coming out on top. But trying to make this project for cheap, so this is what I've got to hand. As far as I'm aware, it's not going to be harmful to myself or to others, so why not? But what I've also got today, these are stains. It's the first time I've ever done this. I have no idea what the results are going to be, which is also why I kind of want to do each one slightly differently. First up, I'm going to do one purely with just the beeswax. Right, okay. Oh, I do actually want to apologise as well. If anyone throughout this video is a bit squeamish and has seen my horrible gammy finger, I apologise. It's what happens when I shut my hand between a really heavy tripod and the corner of a table. It hurts and it makes your finger black and fingernail black and just kind of gross, and then it starts to come. I won't get into it, but it's gross. I'll try to edit out the shots that maybe if I've done a close-up and you've seen it, I'll try and edit those out. But if I can't for some reason, and if it makes sense for me to leave them in, I do apologise, because yeah, it's gross. Anyway, look at this. Can you see that? Oh, look at that. That's darkened up quite a lot with just one coat. Now, for the stains, I'm not certain how to do this. If there are any woodworkers or carvers or anything out there that watch this channel, please give me some helpful tips down below for using stains and maybe do's and don'ts and stuff like that. Because yeah, total beginner, and this is all an experiment. The other reason why I've done so many is so that I can practice first. So that's why first up is this little kids one that I'm not too bothered about if it gets a little bit messed up. Let's go with cherry mahogany. Give it a shake. Don't know if you need to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm gonna stain my fingers. I should probably have gloves on. Obviously, I don't have gloves, so it doesn't say you definitely have to use gloves. First up, we have cherry mahogany. Next, red cedar. I think that was that way around. Yep, because it's red cedar, I then spilt it on the table. Honestly, so far, I'm not one. This to me just looks too much like paint. Yeah, meh. I'm sure the other thing I could do that I've seen other people do is water these down, or even add some of the oils to the stain, or add the stain to the oil, sorry, so that again it has a lighter and different effect. But yeah, let's see. What do we think there? That's dark oak. What do you think? But that's what it will look like and after. So we have teak. You kind of see the difference in colour between the two. I'm not really loving these results so far. So the main two, let's call them, I'm going to just leave them as is and only put on the beeswax, I think. So now I'm going to turn the camera off and apply maybe 2, 3, 5 coats to see how it goes to all of these, and then cut back. See you in a sec. Before I show you the finished articles, I have one more method for finishing off that I'm trying out. So this is bark from a spruce tree that while I was out walking with Echo up in the mountains, I went to a place that was like a farmed forest, and we collected some of the bark that you can kind of peel off if it's the right time of year and it's just freshly cut. You can peel off bits of that bark. In the past, I've experimented with just purely a bucket, some water, and fresh bark bundled in together like this. And for this project, I tried out sticking in some wands as well. It's been in now for about a week and a half, maybe. So, moment of truth. Oh, I think so. I think that's definitely darkened the colour. And then the other one here, this one hasn't been sanded at all, and this is the one that fits in the basket. That's strange, it almost feels a little grey. Almost feels like it's, yes, slightly made it go a bit greyer. Considering this is purely just natural things that I foraged from the wilderness, I'm not using any kind of extra chemicals or anything like that I've bought from shops. I'm pretty pleased, especially with this one here. Especially with that. Okay, I'm going to dry these off, wax these ones as well, and then see you in a sec. What do you reckon? Can you see a difference? That bit's been done, this bit hasn't. I'm being quite liberal with this, and I found, especially like with this one, when it's nice and smooth anyway, it's just nice to apply it with your hands. Again, this is beeswax and almond oil, so it's food safe and safe for me to touch with my hands. Obviously, there are things that aren't safe to touch with your hands, so just please bear that in mind. Just because I'm doing it with this doesn't mean you can do it with everything. Yep, that'll do. Right, bits of spruce root. I don't like it. Second attempt, I kind of went back and forward and tried to loop it up a bit more. Adds a kind of extra texture to it, and I quite like that extra texture. I did do one before that ended up being a lot better than this, where I'd used the spruce root wrap as a handle. So this was an example, a little quick example of that. I quite like it. It looks a bit rough and ready, but it still, the texture works quite well when everything else is quite smooth. So yeah, what do you think? All finished. So what have I learned? Let's go through one by one. First up, we've got the tiny kind of kids one with the more red stain over the top. What have I learned with this one? I think that I don't like stain. It's a short answer. It kind of has like a matte finish to it, and almost, I don't know, like there's the grittiness that I was really hoping that the wax would cover and it would smooth things out again. But yeah, to me, it just feels like kids poster paint, and the end result I don't like it. I just don't like it. So that kind of goes on to number 2, which is this one. I love how the twist came out. Overall, I like the slight curve to it, the natural kind of curve, but I don't like the stain. Thirdly, this one, love how it just fits into your hand and kind of curves, and it's just, this beautiful natural piece. Don't like the stain. Probably I might end up sanding this off and starting again. I kind of like the idea, and I practiced on this one, of setting fire to the end, because I love the idea of creating some kind of background story where it's like it's been used and then has been burnt and cracked, and something happens to the wand that gives it this character. And today I learned how not to do it, because I burnt way too much and I charcoaled the end and it snapped off. I mean, it still kind of is cool and still has a bit of story to it. Comments down below if you have advice for how to do that. I just did it with a lighter. I know you can get the mini powerful burners, so maybe something like that would work better. The thing that you do creme brulee with. Well, not me, I don't make creme brulee, but other people make creme brulee with. Otherwise, pretty pleased with that one. Now, you may have seen the other video where I made this kind of witch's basket, and this fits perfectly into that. Look at that. Oh, love it. It makes me think of Gandalf's staff and how in his staff his pipe fits perfectly within it. Just, love that touch. So anyway, this was one of the first ones that I made. I haven't really done much extra to it. I've done a little bit of carving, but no sanding. And this has just been dunked in the bark solution, the bark and water solution. And yeah, quite like how this has come out. The other one is this one, which was in the bark and water solution again. I like how that's darkened this up just a little bit, because sometimes I felt with some of them it was quite light and I wanted to just deepen that colour a little bit more. Now onto my 3 favourites. First up is this one. This was my first ever attempt at carving this spiral in. And it's super simple, just the bark carved off at the end and then a bit of carving on here. And then this is just had sanded on the end of the one there. And super simple. Love how that's come out. Really glad I didn't stain it, and yeah, love it. Second up, the main one for today. What do we think? I love the textures. I'm really pleased with how this came out, and underneath that gnarled extra bit on the end is this beautiful, smooth, gnarly, higgledy-piggledy shape, and the colour, the deepness of colour when you get to the bits and pieces where it's, I guess, regrown and it's multiple years growth. And I love how that's come out. Naturally, as I was gouging things out, you got this little hole here, which I'm thinking I might try in another video to make something like a bracelet or a lanyard or something like that, especially because this one, another reason why I love it, hand fits around it like this, and how that just sits so comfortably around your hand. Like, that's what excites me, and it's just a pleasurable thing about finding those natural materials. And when you find something that seems to just have naturally been made for you or your hand, I mean, to be honest, anyone with hands similar size to me or even smaller, it'd be fine for, but I just love it. And then this one, I absolutely really love how the spirals come out. Oh, and then the knot, it's like a beauty spot. It's like perfectly made for it. So yeah, really pleased with that, how that came out. But my surprise favourite for the day has got to be this one. Just look at that. Oh, it's so pretty. I love it. So this, another example of, found at the same time, is this piece of root here. This one has been totally untreated. I haven't even sanded anything to this one compared to this one that's sanded and treated. And yeah, just how deep that colour is. I ended up putting, I think, about 5 coats of the wax on this, just because it just brings out the richness of that colour so much. I love it. And again, it just feels like it's just been made for fitting in my hands. The way this curves here and it just fits in that bit of your palm. I bring my hand round and then there's a little bit here just for your finger to sit. I think, to be honest, for someone with maybe slightly smaller hands than me, this would be even more perfect. But yeah, love it. And then even down to, there's actually a little bit of kind of glazed bit at the end where I think it's a bit of sap from the inside the tree. So in the right light, it just kind of shimmers and shines and adds a little bit of extra magic. And yeah, so really, really pleased with how those came out. I'm currently looking into potentially selling some of these things that I make. So again, if you're interested, if you would like one of these, I mean, maybe not these two, I might keep them, I don't know. But if you're interested, please let me know. I've been looking at Etsy, but honestly, I think Etsy feels like it's not really made for sellers anymore. So I'm maybe even looking at maybe just doing my own website and only sharing it with yourselves, basically, the audience of this channel. And it's kind of, as well as, or instead of doing Patreon, I might have products on sale, for example, this basket with the wand or things like that. So let me know. Otherwise, if you've enjoyed this video today, you could do me one massive favour, and that would be to share it with one other person that you think would be interested. I'm going to leave you today with something else that you might be interested in. This right here is a backpack that I made using a random weave technique. If you're interested, and the reason why I think you might be, is because this is going to be becoming, alongside this basket here, are going to together become a bit of the kind of wizard character that I'm building, the journeying wizard or witch, and with their wand, with the extra materials, and most importantly, the basket. So I'll leave you watching this one today. Otherwise, thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. There we go. Look at this lovely display. Oh, the lights turned off. Well, that's it. Filming done then. Bye, everyone.